At this point, I'll introduce Chief Norowski that will provide you some of that information.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to give you a little bit of the details of what occurred today. Shortly after 7 a.m., we had a patrol officer at the intersection of Division Street and Atwater Avenue. The officer was stopped at a red traffic light. Two males approached the vehicle and were pounding on the windows in distress. While the officer was trying to determine what type of assistance they needed, he had to move to the curb line. As he was determining that, a vehicle was passing by, driving by the intersection, and one of the two males that were in distress pulled out a handgun and fired several shots into the passing vehicle. Our officer then engaged that suspect that had a weapon and fired at him, striking the suspect. Shortly after that, those two individuals were taken into custody. One was transported to a local hospital with a gunshot wound to the lower extremity. He's in stable condition and being treated there at this time. At this point, a firearm was recovered at the scene, and the scene is active and still being investigated. Per our protocols and per the state police major crime is going to be conducting that investigation in the effort of transparency. And all further press releases are going to be coming from the state police at this time.
Was anyone hurt in the car that individual shot into?
At this time, we don't believe so.
Do you have that car in your possession, or does the state police, chief?
The state police is investigating this, but the car remained at the scene.
Not the Derby cruiser, the car passing by.
Correct. All people and evidence are accounted for at the scene. There's no threat to the community at large.
Chief,
it never was.
Can you identify the officer and tell us how long he or she has been on the force?
At this point, it's too early in the investigation and it's too fluid. And like I said, because the investigation is being turned over to the state police, I just wanted to put out some preliminary information now for transparency purposes.
Do we know what the two people that were in distress, do we know if it was related to the vehicle that came by? Do you know if they were looking for help?
It's too early in the investigation.
Was the officer alone, or was he with a partner?
Officer was alone.
Is that standard practice?
That is.
Do you know the approximate ages of the two people that approached the car? Are they juveniles or?
There was one juvenile involved. He is not the one who engaged anybody or carrying a firearm.
Which municipality is this under, Derby or Ansonia?
So Division Street is literally a dividing line between Derby and Ansonia. We have to travel on each other's roads to get from point A to point B. So it is a Derby officer in Ansonia, right on the town line, being investigated by the Connecticut State Police Major Crime.
Do you know where the individuals are from?
I do not.
Can you explain what exactly you mean by individuals in distress when they were pounding on that car?
Two males ran up to the car and were pounding on the windows, asking for help. And it was a very fluid and volatile, fast situation that occurred.
And the individual that fired the shot into the passing car was not the juvenile?
Correct.
Okay.
When you say shot in the lower extremity, is that shot in the leg?
Leg, yes.
In what hospital?
I believe Bridgeport.
Okay, any update on how they're doing?
I do not. And like I said, what we have is preliminary information because we're not the investigating agency.
Do you have the race of the individuals involved?
I believe they were African Americans.
Both of the young men?
All of them involved except for the officer, yes.
Do you have the race of the officer?
White male. Really, and that has no bearing in the matter. You had a African American male shooting at an African American male.
Did the officer have a body camera and was it on?
No, our agency does not have them. We're in the procurement process right now through the state grant.
And what about the dash cam?
No dash cams.
Are you getting cooperation from the people that were involved in this, you said?
At this point in time, like I said, we're not the investigating agency, unfortunately.
Chief or Trooper Dorellis, can you talk about why there was either I assume a Derby officer, at a house that was a couple of houses away from the scene, sort of standing with people at a house. Was someone from that house involved in the incident this morning?
So typically with any use of force investigation, officers will arrive on scene and try to gather as much facts and circumstances as it pertains to the investigation. So that's what you saw this afternoon. Detectives, not only from Derby and Ansonia, but also Western District Major Crimes detectives on scene trying to identify any potential witnesses to gather the facts and circumstances as it pertains to this investigation so that we could be able to provide that information to the state's attorney. At this point, again, Western District Major Crime Squad detectives were requested by our state's attorney to assume the use of force investigation, and we'll be coordinating the release of any further information with the state's attorneys.
Trooper Dorellis, which state's attorney's office was it? Was it
So we'll be
Danvers?
working with Milford State's Attorney's Office and Danbury State's Attorney's Office for the coordination of release of information. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Again, further information will be released as soon as it's available. Thank you.
One last quick question. The
Yes.
person that was in the car that was shot at, did they remain on scene as well?
The person did remain on scene and is being extremely cooperative at this point. Thank you.
But nobody in the car was struck.
I'll have more information for you as soon as available.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief.